Welcome and thank you for joining us here on Stream 1 at the Data Science Conference Europe 25. My name is Alex and I'll be your host throughout today's exciting sessions. We're kicking things off with Balbodh Chauhan, Senior Product Manager at Smartsheet. His session is titled The Product Manager's Playbook for Responsible AI, Building Trust, Governance, and Security from Day One. Balbodh, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Data Science Conference. Um, Alex may have covered this already. My name is Balbodh. I'm a senior product manager at Smartsheet, and the session is about the product manager's playbook for building responsible AI, and by making sure there's trust, governance, and security involved from day one. We're going to treat this as like a hands-on workshop, and so we will be participating in conversations and exercises and discussions as we go ahead. I have some content that I have prepared for you to walk you through on what this topic is about and what are the elements that are important as a product manager in this space. So, without further ado, let me just kick this off. So, my role currently at Smartsheet involves looking after multiple product areas, including the core security and governance. But in addition to that, I've now started looking at the overall AI capabilities that are launched in Smartsheet. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Smartsheet, but it's a tool that allows you to manage your processes and work in a spreadsheet kind of a format, and allows you to basically superpower your processes. But then in today's world, AI is kind of a very important thing. And so the area that I'm looking at is about how do I safely and securely bring those AI powered capabilities to our enterprise customers so that they stay compliant and are in control of how AI is working in their organization. Before that, I worked in environments like Amazon Prime Video and in energy tech, where automation and data products were really prevalent, fed into financial reporting, compliance, and a lot of operational decisioning on the floor. Um, these experiences have taught me two things. One, AI and automation can unlock tremendous advantage and leverage for the person who is using it. But without explicit governance and trust building, this all of this leverage can turn into invisible risk really, really quickly. That's why this workshop is focused on practical product-centered ways to build responsible AI from day one. And I appreciate you taking time to be here today. So most conversations about AI, when anybody you speak to anybody, they're about models, GPUs, and benchmarks. Um, but the friction I see in real product orgs is different. Legal is worried about exposure, security is worried about data, and customers are worried about trust. And finally, leadership is worried about the headlines. Today is about giving PMs the space to navigate or a playbook to navigate how to go around bringing that governance. How do you frame that risk? How do you design governance, and how do you instrument trust across the board? So, um, customers ask, can we trust this? Is this AI that, and this is more, applicable in the enterprise space, in the B2B space than the B2C space, because we don't use day-to-day AI for the purposes which have a lot of sensitive data. But what happens when it fails? Who is accountable? Where does that data go? I think a lot of these are more enterprise concerns across the board. So let me set expectations on the format, how we'll work together. This is interactive and hands-on. Through this session, we will use Zoom polls and chats to understand who's in the room. We'll break out into smaller groups if need be to do the exercises. And we will have a shared Google Doc for collaboration. What you will leave today with is um, few artifacts that you can leverage, some reusable artifacts and learnings on how to apply these governance models, metrics framework, and roadmap templates. in your day-to-day work. If you're dealing with AI and if you are interested in working on the governance and security aspect of AI, right? There will be some language as well that would help, that will be useful for you to go back and talk to your leadership or talk to your colleagues about, on how do you actually speak governance, how do you speak risk, how do you speak compliance, because these are terms that usually come as an afterthought to a lot of people. And so from that perspective, this session is supposed to be like, hey, once you do it, you're going to be feeling much better about what you learn here today. So today's journey is about 90 minutes. We're going to spend about 15 minutes on intro and framing, understanding why responsible AI is a product problem. We're going to do a quick lab around how do we tier risk in AI scope, and how should we design our governance model around that risk. Then we'll do a quick bridge into measurement. Like once something ships, how do we know on the AI front it's working and is safe, right? And so we will talk about a second lab, which is some design metrics plus guardrails for one concrete AI feature, and run like a mini incident simulation which says, hey, if this happens, how are you going to tackle it? Like, how do you measure metrics? Is the metric going wrong? Is it not going wrong? Are you seeing the impact that you wanted to see, or is something off with the metric altogether? So the goal is that you leave it to artifacts you can reuse, a risk tiering and governance template, and a trust risk metrics and incident template, which you can go back and actually use in your workplace. Now, moving ahead, just to do a quick poll, and Alex can help me, shoot this one. How many of you are along on in one of these categories? I'd love to see the results and the outcome for that. So please select the category of the role that primarily applies to you. Cool. Yeah, let's just give it a couple of more seconds. Yep. Alex, is it possible to move forward? I feel like we should be able to see the results.
You,
Awesome. So we
yeah,
have 60% people are engineers. We don't have any product managers. And we have people belong to other category. That's really interesting. Now, I don't know. I know not all of you have voted. So I would want to make sure that this is something that represents the whole group. But even if it's not, even for engineers, it is really important to know how to speak to product managers, right? How to go about doing the planning, how to go about, structuring this problem around the risk and governance for AI tools, right? So, and next quick one, right? Which is, when you think about scaling AI in your org or in your org's context, is it speed, compliance, trust, or just all of the above that really matter to you? Go ahead and vote, and we'll just wait for the results to come in. Cool. Let's just see what the people have voted. So the results are in, and not surprisingly, a lot of you have said it's all of the above, and that's the correct answer. In the case of AI and scaling in the organizational context, speed is really important because you want to have competitive advantage in the market, which is really rapidly changing. But avoiding regulatory compliance issues and protecting user trust and brand goes hand in hand. One AI breach, one AI model that goes out of its way to give some results to the customer can breach that years of trust that you may have built with them just because sensitive data got exposed. And so that's exactly why we need a governance and product framework, something that lets us move fast and stay in control, but at the same time keep maintaining customer trust. It's kind of, being on a balanced bike and trying to, juggle at the same time. It's difficult, but it is definitely possible. So with that in mind, let's just go to the next one. So let's set the core framing. When AI goes wrong in the real world, it's rarely because the model is bad in isolation, right? It's usually that the wrong use case was chosen to leverage with AI. UX didn't make limits or controls clear. No one agreed to what high risk actually meant, or there was no defined approval path on implementing something, that leverages AI in the backend. The reason to think about these factors is users don't experience a model, right? They are never interacting with the model in the first hand. In today's world, it's all about agentic experiences. It's all about experiences that can go and autonomously work in the background. And so they experience a product, right? Nobody goes and writes the interactions with the LLM directly. Everybody has a wrapper on top of it. It's ChatGPT, it's Claude, it's some sort of an interface, right? How they interact. And so they experience the product, labels, flows, error states, and controls essentially. As we add AI to more surfaces across multiple product lines, governance and trust don't magically scale. Like we expect, hey, if we add more infrastructure, suddenly all of our, everything that we built for AI can scale really quickly. We can process more queries because adding infrastructure is really easy. But having governance, and governance and trust scale along with it is a really difficult exercise. You have to go years and years without making a mistake to make sure that you can actually safeguard your customer trust. And that's why PMs have a critical role. We sit at the intersection of this value and risk, and we are responsible for turning we are responsible for turning responsible AI principles into concrete decisions. Like all of this is not theoretical; it's actually implemented. If you have come across IBM's data breach report, they do this very unique report every year around the cost of a breach, essentially, and it's been steadily rising year in year because organizational modes and organizational context has become even more important in a world where you can just go to a chat GPT and get all your answers in one very couple of minutes. And so those principles and how to implement them, we are seeing them today being the topmost customer ask. They are not allowing adoption in the enterprise space because of lack of controls that are there for the customers, right? And so they're like, I don't feel comfortable. I'm not going to use something that does not give me the control of how and what it's doing, right? So we talked about scaling AI is not is equal to scaling governance and trust. It does not come magically. But a common failure pattern, right? You may have seen this if you're remotely related to shipping AI features, which is let's say a team ships an AI feature quickly, maybe a summarizer, a recommender, or an assistant with the mindset of we will tighten the governance later, right? We will bolt on the controls. We will put the controls in later. Right now, it's very important to go to market really quickly, and that's fair. A lot of the customers, a lot of the in the way the world is moving today so fast with AI, that may be the natural stance. But this initial excitement quickly turns. We ship it, users try it, we start seeing, and then we start seeing strange or risky outputs, confusion about reliability and scope, support and sales teams getting tough questions. Hey, why is this not working the way I expect it to be? Where is my admin controls? I want to switch this off, but I can't. And then you have, a sharp increase in these support tickets and internal escalations. You may have seen your own productivity go down because use of AI, not it definitely helped speed up some of the body of work, but at the same time, you open yourself up to a barrage of escalations, internal escalations coming up from customers. Critical questions emerge. Leadership starts asking, well, what were the checks that we did not do? What's logged? What are we logging from those outputs and inputs? Who signed off on this? And suddenly it becomes a scenario of um, who is responsible, who was how who whose neck can be hold and say this is the person whose fault it was, and it's actually nobody's fault because it was governance and strategy, governance and compliance was thought of as an afterthought, and that's not the way to build in today's world. So in the end, what happens without a structured, without structured governance, without clear owner? The answer is usually there was no explicit operating model, no consistent risk tiers, no clear approval path to build a feature, and that results in damage of trust. And in the business of enterprise SaaS, in the business of product, once you lose customer trust, it's the hardest thing to win. Like your money can come back, but your customer trust won't. And so a lot of companies, make it a point to focus on customer trust incessantly. When I was at Amazon, customer obsession was a key parameter. We didn't look at competitors. We just focused on the customer obsessively to say, hey, what does the customer want? And they're never wrong, is what we always presume. Bottom line, uh, our job, PM's job, is to prevent that situation by designing governance into how we build and scale AI. Like, don't chase the launch metric, don't chase the scalability metric for adoption for that AI tool that you're building. Make sure that it's safe and sound when it's being shared, when it's being given access to the customers. So, moving on to the next one. AI governance, essentially, if you think about it in practice, is a three-part framework, right? You have your principles and policies, high-level commitments like I will not train on customer personally identifiable information, PII information without consent. I will make sure there is human override available or human in the loop, designs for high impact decisions, and we will document all the data sources and limitations. These are kind of like your, high level tenets and principles and policies that you can set up. And there's then guardrails and processes, right? This is where PMs live, defining risk tiers, review checklists, legal security, privacy approvals. I can't stress enough on how many times when building PMs overlook the need to speak to their internal legal security and privacy approvals. And when something goes bad, it comes back to bite the company really, really bad. Similarly, building clear human in the loop rules, um, tooling and evidence. I think this one is like how you actually operationalize these guardrails and processes. You build audit logs, you make sure that everything is logged for the customer. You have a model registry where you can maintain versions. You have monitoring dashboards that allow you to look at the health of your AI tools and alerts that you will rely on when someone asks, how do we know this is safe? Well, you say, hey, we have put this in control in place. And so in our exercise today, we'll mostly operate in layers 2 and 3, where we'll be turning principles into repeatable processes and artifacts. Right? Okay. Here's a quick primer on a couple of things that people don't normally think about when thinking about security and governance in AI. Is who is involved in AI governance, right? It's not just a PM who's involved. Um, Responsible AI is a team sport. Product managers are central to it, but there are tons of stakeholders across your organization. Some who have even more say than they have had before. Like when you launch regular features which don't really impact customers at large scale, some may be involving security, like security and compliance and legal, but not all. But in the AI world today, every feature that you build is is a reason of concern for customer. And so to to support that narrative, legal compliance cares about regulatory exposure and contractual promises. Think about your GDPR rules, your ISO certifications, your the PHI data regulations on your credit card information, your BAAs, right? All of these regulations that have been built to make sure that the customer is not adversely impacted. That's what legal and compliance cares about. We bring them in for high risk usage and non-obvious data usage. And security and cybersecurity teams, they are thinking about attack surfaces, data exfiltration, prompt injection, that sort of a thing. We involve them in like threat modeling. How do we understand access controls and are being designed in the right way, nobody can abuse them. And logging discussions, like how do I make sure that I have a log that the customers can go back to understand what happened. Your data science and ML colleagues are making models and evaluation choices. We work with them on risk tiering, evals design, and guardrails. UX research, I we cannot overlook UX research at all. They understand they ensure that the user understands what AI does, where it might fail, and how they stay in control. So it's also about educating the end customer about the risks of working with AI without the proper controls. Customer success is finally the one who bears the brunt of all of the mistakes that we do, right? They see real world escalations and enterprise concerns. They need playbooks for what happens when AI outputs go wrong. And they are basically told, go figure it out once it has happened. So in our first exercise, we'll design a governance operating model that shows where these functions plug into lifecycle of our AI initiatives roughly, may not be very accurately. Um, but uh, next, sorry. So the one couple of more things that I want to complete before we jump into the first exercise is this diagram visually represents the product lifecycle, right? But with responsible AI baked in at every stage. So every product will go through discovery, design, thinking of the data and architecture, build and evaluate phase, launch, and finally operating and evolving it into something bigger. In discovery, now today it's not just about market need, but also identifying potential high risk AI ideas and doing like early legal and security checks on data and use cases. An example could be if you're going to build an auto summarize feature which is going to send that customer's data, and you're thinking, hey, is this a need? You might want to involve your legal and security teams to say what data can you store, what data can you not store, what data can go outside the organizational boundaries, and things like that. During design, we proactively consider how to build UX for transparency, consent and control, and plan for failure modes and human override paths, which basically means at any point, how can I give the control of this capability to the customer? For data and architecture, we apply data minimization principles, implement robust access controls and define logging and audit requirements upfront, which makes sure that when we are thinking about the architecture, it's already baking in the responsible AI stuff. In the build and evaluate phase, we go beyond typical testing to include red team scenarios, adversarial tests, and rigorous bias and robustness checks. Sometimes your models may hallucinate. Hallucination is going down with all the controls that the core LLM, providers are building in already, like in terms of RAG and any context knowledge that goes in there. But it's still a problem when it does not have the right context. Garbage in is always going to be garbage out for AI. When it's time to launch, we use feature flags and gradual rollouts, ensuring there's a clear owner for go no go decisions across the org. And finally, in the operate and evolve, we want to continuously monitor all our metrics, alerts, incident handling protocols, and we want to make sure that we are doing periodic reviews of these processes to make sure that we are um, critically maintaining responsible AI over time. It's not something that's once and done. You have to keep revisiting it time and again. So there are three buckets of metrics for AI features that we're going to talk about down the road. I just wanted to bring that up. Value and adoption. So this talks about, are people using AI feature and does it actually help them? Think in terms of time saved, AI assisted completion rate. That's more like what people focus on the usability front. Risk and reliability, right? How often do users override or discard AI outputs? How often do they flag something as unsafe or wrong? How many incidents are we seeing related to this? And trust and satisfaction. Like, do users feel they can rely on this feature? What does qualitative feedback say? CSAT, NPS scores, you know, the more the customers trust something, they're willing to overlook something that's bad or something, something hallucinating nature, something of a hallucinating nature that's coming out of the model, because they trust that you do a good job in giving them the control to choose that answer. Most teams do a decent job in the first bucket. Responsible AI means we equally prioritize the second and the third bucket. So there's a couple of example initiatives we will use today, like an AI email assistant that suggests outreach emails to prospects based on CRM data. AI support summarizer. Think of this as that summarizes recent tickets to agents so that they can respond faster. Uh, and AI incident prioritizers, which suggest priority severity level for incoming incidents based on the sentiment of the knowledge. Or you can use any AI feature you are currently working on, right? But you'll have to briefly explain it in your group. I would suggest thinking about your own AI scenario, because that will you will be closer to it, and that will enable you to think a bit more critically about the whole activity. So on to the part that you guys have been waiting for most, the first lab. In this one, it's about answering which AI things are actually high risk and what should change for them, right? So I have a Google Doc that I will share the link to. I can see that there are about 12 folks in the call, now 13. So I would love to break you guys into groups of like four each, and one person who's attending can be, join any other group. uh, what I want us to do is I have a set of instructions that we can go through in the doc. And then using those instructions, I have a worked out example, but I don't want you guys to refer to it until you feel like you are stuck. Uh, pick a pick a group header. I can show you how it's structured. Um, and what we will do is we will build a risk rubric for your AI initiatives, right? We'll figure out how do you classify risk. We'll score each initiative and assign low, medium, high tiers. And then we'll define governance by tier, like who's involved at which life cycle stage, what must exist before launch. And we'll try to write a few tier-based approval and escalation rules, right? So without further ado, what I'm going to do is, before we break out, I'm gonna, share my screen. So let me just change my screen share. Can somebody confirm if they're able to see a Google Doc
Yes,
chat?
yes,
Okay,
everything is good.
awesome. Thank you. So, objective is to create a simple, realistic AI risk model and connect it to clear governance expectations. So teams know how to process and how much process and scrutiny is appropriate for different AI initiatives. Uh, Identify 3 to 5 initiatives, real or hypothetical, across your products. I'd recommend across your products. Define a risk rubric. Like, you can choose 3 to 4 risk dimensions that you think are important to cover all the aspects of any, product related risk, like data sensitivity, decision criticality, scale, regulatory exposure risk, right? That depends on you. For each dimension, define what low, medium, and high risk means in concrete terms. Then we will score and tier each initiative that you have chosen in the first step against each rubric and give it a score. And then we'll sum up the scores to find out what category does the risk that initiative fall in, what category of risk. Then we for each risk tier we will decide which roles must be involved, which life cycle stage do they show up in, like in terms of the problems that we talked about, and which artifacts must exist before launch. This is about also having those critical artifacts that the custom that ground this responsible AI stuff into reality. Like, this is what you can share with the stakeholders if somebody asks, hey, how did you decide? How did you come up to this answer, right? Like, here is my output. And lastly, we'll define rules that depend on the tier. We'll write a small set of approval rules, who must sign off for which tier, and escalation rules like what happens and with whom when things go wrong, like who is responsible to answer, who is going to be taking ownership of a certain thing. And so that's essentially the exercise. I'm just going to confirm again the state of the group participation. We have, let me see how many members. We have, yeah, we have 12 participants, I think. Correct. So groups of 4 would be really good. What you need to do is you need to go into one of these. I think if you use 1, 2, and 3, that should be fine. Once you go in, I have basically put in the relevant explanations for each step, and I've left this empty for you to be able to think through on what needs to go in. And what we'll do at the end of it is we'll do a debrief to see what people had to say, what they thought of. What I have done is, sorry, let me just fix this. What I've done is I have a worked out example here, but I don't want you to refer to it because then it won't be really a learning experience. We will talk through this example once you guys have finished, right? So here is the link. It should be possible to share. Let me just find my chat. Okay. Um, Alex, do you think you can help us break out into like 3 groups? Um,
I don't. What do you mean by
like, do
three
we have
groups?
breakout rooms in Zoom that we can use?
I don't think so.
Oh, no? Okay, no
No.
worries. So, what what I'm gonna do is then I'm just gonna call out the folks from the attendee list and say, please work on group 1. So, Alexa, Boyana, and Borislav, can you please work on the group 1 page? Um, and who else do we have? Ivan, Giovanna, and Milana, can you please use the group 2 in example 1? And remaining folks, Miroslav, Mladen, Stefan, and Zoran. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your names incorrectly. Please work on the group 3 tab. We'll carve out about 20-25 minutes for this exercise. Yeah, and then take your take your pick. We don't have unfortunately breakout rooms, so I don't know if people can like discuss, but feel free to use the like comments or chat in the Zoom chat to be able to talk to others. Let's spend like 15 minutes trying to fill this in. I just realized that people won't be able to actually speak with each other, which is going to be really tricky.
I can allow people to speak, but if we allow everyone to speak, it will
Yeah, that
probably
could
be too
not work.
much.
Okay, so I have another one. If you have not already started, filling it out, I'm gonna create one tab for everybody on the call. So I'm gonna make like 11 tabs, and then I'm gonna call out each person and what tab they can work on. So that way you can work alone on that topic. I would have loved this for this to be a common activity, but so just give me a second. I'm gonna do that really quickly. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Perfect. Okay. Oh, sorry, my bad. Okay, so we have the different tabs ready. Alexa, if you can pick the group 1, uh, Boyana, group 2, please. Ivan, group 3. Um, Giovanna, group 4. Marco, group 5, Milana, group 6, Miroslav, group 7, Mladen, group 8, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Onion, um, Group 9, Stefan, Group 10, and Zoran, Group 11. I hope this helps. Apologies for the confusion. I thought we could do breakouts, but hopefully this should work. Cool. I'm gonna be on mute. I'm still here. If you have any questions, please feel free to ping me, and I'm more than happy to answer those. But we'll just take 15 20 minutes for you guys to run through this each section and see what you think the answer should be. Thank you. Okay, I see some of you adding and writing to the doc. That's really good. Checking in to see if anybody has any thoughts, questions. Please feel free to drop in a chat. Don't want to disturb you while you're working. At any point when you feel stuck, feel free to go to this first sub tab, which is example 1 group 0, and it has a worked out example in case you want to understand what that section is about just by looking at the data. I see a few attendees have joined the call. We are doing an exercise. I will reshare the doc in the chat if you haven't joined. Sorry, wrong chat. Yeah. Um, in this Google Doc, we are just trying to follow list of steps that we have set up to basically define a couple of things. Like we want to build a risk rubric for our AI initiative. And so we want to score them into and assign them risk priorities and use that to define who is involved at what life cycle stage of the product. This is about the core goal is for us to be able to answer the question which AI things are actually high risk and who should be in charge of, being responsible for them. Yeah, and even if you have like two initiatives, that's fine. We can move on. The idea behind the session, this particular lab, is to give you hands-on experience on how you would have to do this if you were in your job and you were approaching a new AI feature or a couple of AI features. How would you go around building that? So you're welcome to leverage the knowledge that has been put up in example in group 0, example 1, to be able to build your own narrative. If you want to work on any area that seems interesting to you and you don't know where to begin, just pick any sub tab where nobody has started working, and you can treat this as your sort of playing ground to experiment, write down stuff that you have on your mind. Okay. So I see a couple of folks have completed section 1. And so while they are doing that, I'm going to be, you know, talking about what kind of initiatives people have, you know, put up, because it's really interesting to know where everybody is heading, what are the initiatives that people are working on. So let me share my screen. Since you all are anonymous, you don't have to worry whose tab is what. Um, so I'll tell you what I had written down, right? What screen can you see? Yeah, okay, you can see my Google Doc. So, um, the couple of AI initiatives I had were, I think I talked about them earlier as well. In the support platform, like for your support teams, you can have some sort of AI support ticket summarizer. Customer tickets can be really long with a lot of information, and not just that, a lot of to and fro because sometimes you respond, customers respond back, and it becomes a really lengthy piece of conversation. I myself, as a product manager, have had to dug into, you know, a lot of tickets to understand what category do they belong into, right? Is that relevant for my feedback? And summarization is a really good tool that one could use to really quickly get insight. So that's one. Then on the CRM side, some sort of way to score a lead, um, and then be able to understand what's the next best action. Suggest reps who should they contact, um, and what to do so that they can maximize basically their impact on converting a lead. And then billing and finance, you can have like an AI invoice payout anomaly detection, which flags anomalous invoices or payout records that might affect payments. The good thing with AI is that we can do a lot of fuzzy processes that weren't possible before. And so um, you could let the AI figure out instead of having to define ground rules, which is where all of these areas come into play. Let's take a look at what some of the other folks have been talking about. So, support platform for reporting, generate monthly, quarterly, and yearly reports. Um, the organization is obliged to provide different reports, but from time to time cover the same period of time. And January is a part of the first quarter report. Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, being able to bridge data gaps, that's a really good one. um what else? Documentation search, I love this one. Users can ask questions in natural language and receive answers. I think that's a really good one. Document classification, group documents by topics. What I wouldn't give to build this today for myself. I came across another one the other day. It's like, as a working as a PM, I have these so many tools in an organization. You know, have Slack, you have Teams, you have Zoom, and you have, you know, all of your collaboration tools, Figmas and Miros and Lucids, that everybody keeps tagging you in different places. So could you build a feature that summarizes all your action items from all these tools, puts them in like one single place so that all you need to do is just follow this list. Don't have to worry about which system it sort of got generated in. So that's an interesting idea that could be leveraged. Um, Interesting. What else? Natural language to custom BI query language. That's a really good one because I have trouble like trying to learn any underlying language because they keep coming out with new formats. And so using natural language to convert, like I use Snowflake a lot and the Copilot tool there to update my queries. I give it a really complex query and say, can you make it performant? And it does that. And so that's a really good one. Business suggest how to modify product availability, follow personal competitive trends. Yeah, that's a really good one as well. How can you be more competitively successful across customers? So I see a lot of people really talking about really good initiatives. um, I'm gonna move on to the next section. I hope I'm not holding anybody back from doing the next sections as they were doing. um, I can pause for a few minutes if that helps. Okay. I see the activity has kind of dropped down after a certain point. So I feel like what we can do, switch to, is review what I have put together so that gives everybody an idea on what they can, how they can leverage it when they go back from today. Take this with you, implement it at your workplace, see if it helps you. So we talked about the initiatives. They're definitely important ones. The next one is, how do you define something that's so qualitative in an objective way? I think this is what the second dimension is about. So defining dimensions and scales up front, it forces clarity and brings everybody on the same page. When I was at Amazon, I was working on the financial systems, and there's so many metrics moving around. Getting people to a common metrics that which is non-disputable, hey, this is the North Star, I think is the biggest thing that somebody could do. And once that is done, you have kind of paved your way in terms of getting alignment, because everybody knows how to compare two things that are apples and apples, right? You can't compare apples and oranges. um, and so that's why it's important to ground these dimensions. They may be different for your scenario depending on things like context of the organization, the industry that you operate in, your role in that organization, right? So you have to define clarity on what risk means in that context. So instead of vague feelings, this feels risky, because I can have a different feeling to what is risky compared to somebody else, right? And there's no way it will be like you said, I said scenario, and we will not be any worse for the better. So the idea is to bring everybody to a common metric, and this makes discussions with legal, security, and products so much more concrete and repeatable, because day in and day out you can use the same process, and that takes the burden off of you to you know be in a shouting match with legal in your meeting and say, hey, why are you not listening to me? And legal says, well, this is what I think. And so coming to this groundwork much before you even jump into the whole pit is the important thing here. So I have defined from my perspective dimensions like data sensitivity and exposure. I feel like this is the one which customers are most scared of, right? They're like, hey, my data should not get out there, because if it's exposed, that's the biggest blowback that can happen to my session, to my reputation as a company, as an organization. So you can have three levels of risk: mostly public or fully anonymized data, internal data with limited PII or sensitive data. But there is this high risk data where you have, people's names, their home addresses, their salaries, and whatnot, maintained by the HR department, right? So there was a question around billing and finance, like invoice data can be really high risk. Uh, you could have, I think, let's say, support platform, documentation search, depending on what kind of documents they are. If they're legal documents, they can be, really risky. So the categorization can depend. The other one is decision criticality, right? What this means is um, how important is the outcome of that process in terms of the human taking a decision, right? If it's low stakes outcome, you have low risk. High stakes outcome looks like directly affects money, legal, or legal exposure, or high stakes user outcome. Like, for example, would you give the AI the capability to take autonomous decisions on legal consultations happening in your organization? You wouldn't, right? Because the implications could be uh, far enormous. Similarly, you have scale and blast radius, which is uh, your rollout, on how you're rolling out, right? So you are going to roll a small internal pilot or narrow scope, doesn't matter. It's like a small company level thing. You're releasing it to a limited cohort or product area, or maybe doing a broad rollout across many multiple product areas. So you if something is faulty and it's working with 10,000 things, the scope of fault is 10,000. But if it's something is faulty and it's working with like five things, then your blast radius is really, really small. So similarly, you can define regulatory and contract risk, like there's minimal regulation or contractual terms. Like if you're not in a contractual relationship with a third party vendor and AI needs to work there, then you kind of okay. But if, let's say, when I was in Prime Video, I was on the content partner payment side, and you would have contracts which which actually lay down the terms on how you need to pay those content providers to acquire their content, and they're set in stone. Like you can't take the risk there to be like, we can just go around building around that. We can't, because contractual things directly get taken up to court if there are any challenges with it, and legal action can be taken. So Once you have defined this and you have spoken with your legal security and product teams, like being a product, you have spoken to legal security and compliance teams and any other stakeholders, it's so much easier to now just do things. Like the fact that something is low stakes from a decision criticality, both the PM and a legal team would be okay to agree on. They would not have, two minds around it. So, um, so once you do that, you step into this step three, which is score initiatives and assigning tiers, right? So what you can do is you can have your categories here, which we put here, the three initiatives. Everybody likes to see the table the other way around. I felt like this way it was so much easier to put. Um, so you have your data sensitivity, decision criticality, uh, regulatory contract, and it's a scale of 1 to 3, like similar to how you have 1, 2, and 3. And then what you do is you give a score depending on which element you think is applicable to that initiative, right? So AI support ticket summarizer is a 2 across most of these, right? It's medium risk. It's internal data for sure. Influences operational decisions, yes. Limited cohort or single product area, does not impact the whole blast radius because just that one customer. Some regulatory impact and or customer clauses because you are in direct relationship with that customer. Um, so keeping that, if you sum up that score, you can define tiers, like overall tiers, based on what you expect the total score to be. So across the 4 categories, if you have like high numbers, you would reach a score of 12. If you had 2 for everybody, you would reach 8. If you had 1 for everybody, you would reach 4. So 4, 8, 12. And so you can define your ranges like 4 to 6. It's kind of a low tier, medium tier, high tier, thing. So you can define risk tiers based on the scores and this range that it falls in. And you can then have a brief rationale that says user uses customer messages. Like the AI support ticket summarizer does use customer messages. Some PII, because you have customer information in there, affects replies, but agents still review before this, and it's not an autonomous system that's just working out. You can have the rationale around influencing revenue allocation and follow up at scale, risk of unfair or bias scoring. Whenever you're doing like lead scoring, what if it's overstates the ARR that customer is going to bring in? And then AI invoice payout. I knew that inherently this was high risk, but which category would I put it in was not clear because it directly impacts money and financial. So now that you have this, you can have this conversation with anybody in your organization and nobody would blink an eye on how you see risk across the board for AI capabilities. The next one is to link risk tiers to governance requirements. This is an example. So this connects abstract risk tiers. So now you have low, medium, high, right? How do you match it to concrete expectations? Like teams know if my feature is high risk, I must involve legal and security, and I must produce certain artifacts before launch. So this prevents random ad hoc governance decisions and makes it easier to scale AI safely across many teams and product lines. What this essentially means is for a low risk tier, you don't have to like turn the word around. You don't have to produce like 5 different documents to prove why this is safe. But on the high risk tier, you definitely need those and you need your legal teams involved. So as an example, the next thing one should do is for the low tier, because we don't have any examples in here, the support ticket summarizer, right? You need to have PM, data science and ML because they're involved, UX, and security for doing some data checks, right? You don't need legal here because it's medium risk. The key stages where you want to involve with those stakeholders is across discovery, design, data and architecture, build and evaluate and launch. Um, you don't really have to worry about the operate and evolve stuff because it's all internal, it's working fine. But when you go to this payout anomaly detection and lead scoring, the operate and evolve matters because you want to be able to see if it's doing the right thing later on. Like it's money involved, it's financial constraints involved. And so you can then define what your short risk note should be. Oh, sorry, what your required artifact should be before launch. Before you launch, you should have all of these things in place. Because if you don't, a customer comes in and says, "How did you even make this decision?" You can share these. These are actual artifacts that a PM must be able to produce to safeguard the interests of their organization, to be able to share with customers, to be able to prove internally that when they went ahead and built it, this is the reason. So it's concrete evidence. It's kind of covering CYA. You want to make sure that everything that AI the AI feature is related to is documented based on the tier. For low tiers, you don't have to worry. You can just have like really small rollback kill switch plan, uh, shut it, everything goes okay. That just says not all our AI capabilities are equal, and we need to have an understanding of how to tier them. Next, approval and escalation rules. So rules turn your model into real behavior. Teams know who decides and what happens when something goes wrong. So right now we just talked about the artifacts, but let's say something did go wrong, or you want to launch something and then something did go wrong. Who is answerable? How do you define that, right? So you have to define two extremes. Overreacting, you block everything. Sorry, you have to avoid these two extremes. The answer is not to just block AI, and the answer is not even to and yeah, nothing happened, I really don't care. The answer is somewhere in the middle. You want to be safe and sound while you're going ahead with your AI launches. So clear rules make it easier to communicate. So this is essentially your, how would you say, this is how you define your RASI across AI capabilities. So you'll say, hey, high risk initiatives where total score is greater than 10 will need a formal review with all of these people involved before build starts. We cannot launch without documented evaluation results, known limitations, monitoring and risk metrics configured, a clear rollback, kill switch plan that has been agreed. Medium to risk initiatives only require review by these people. Low risk initiatives can be approved, at the PM level itself. Like you don't need to involve leadership because there is no risk. Um, Sorry, there is low risk. There's not no risk. So at the same time, you also want to be able to define escalation rules. So you can define something like any high risk initiative that contributes to a P0 or a P1 incident. I hope P0 and P1 is like the terminology that everybody is familiar with, given a lot of you said you're engineers. It's also like severity 1, SEV 1, SEV 2s. Incident like incorrect payout. This is the biggest thing I would want to flag. When I was in Amazon, the biggest risk was you paid your customer late, and the second one was you paid your customer incorrectly. Both of them had long lasting repercussions on the trust that you build with the customer. So if there's any high risk initiative, it's immediately restricted or disabled for the affected segment via feature flag. Triggers an incident review within 24 hours with all the exec sponsors and people involved. A medium risk initiative with repeated low severity issues, let's say for over time, is temporarily treated as high risk and then goes through the high risk governance flow and next significant change. So think about it this way. It's medium risk, but it's continuously happening. So in terms of risk and frequency, it just climbed up the scale. And so you want to treat it as high risk. But once that high risk is passed, you have seen escalations being moved from SEV 1 to SEV 2. That's how you can manage your resources and people around you to be able to, leverage this more effectively. Cool. I've said a lot of things. Some of them may stick. Please feel free to take this template and the process in here to suit your needs. You're more than welcome. I'm gonna move on to the next section. So we're gonna do a quick debrief on what did you design. We couldn't go through like all the different sections, but hopefully this was helpful the way I walked through. So we took one risk dimension that you found helpful, like we talked about data sensitivity, the scope of impact, and the blast radius. So think about um, what criteria best help you to organize your AI initiatives. Like think about this when you go back. Um, think about that one initiative that you identified as high risk in your head, and maybe think about why it fell into that category. Think about one practical governance rule you believe that that would be valuable for you to implement in your own organization. And as you um, work through this, keep a lookout for patterns on how similar things are across any org. Um, did different do different people think about this differently? Some may be more privacy focused than others. Is there some model bias involved? How much additional process do you feel is necessary? What's the right balance? Like, you don't want to be over processing. That's why you have to categorize first and say, hey, for things that are not as important, we don't need to have a sword. We can work with a pen, right? And importantly, what shifts would be required in your current product development roadmaps, right, to accommodate for these new governance needs? So if you're an engineer, go speak to your PM about it. If you're a UX person, go speak to your PM about it. If you're a PM, implement these things, from scratch in your organization if you are not seeing these already. This will help you to run the organization, the PM, on the PM aspect of it, your interactions with different stakeholders in a much, much, much seamless manner. Okay. So from governance to measurement, we have established at-risk tiers, we have scaled governance, we have identified who to involve at what point. Next critical question to answer is, just gonna have some water. The next critical question to answer is, once an AI feature ships, right? How do you know it's in the wild, but how do you continuously monitor its performance? How do you ensure it remains safe, useful, and trustworthy over time? This is where we transition from a proactive governance to continuous measurement and monitoring. It's about having the right metrics in place and knowing how to react when things go off track, right? So our next session, the lab 2, will dive into defining these essential metrics, establishing automated guardrails to maintain controls, and like simulating actual incident response to say, oh, we are in a highly tense situation, something has happened, to understand how we can be prepared for potential issues, right? So this lab bridges the gap between your theoretical governance that we talked about, just like managing your process, to practical real-time management of your AI systems, right? Everybody builds metrics around their regular systems, but they're more around usage. We talked about the value metrics in the beginning, right? But the safety metrics, the governance metrics that are required on the AI front specifically, because AI has the special nature that it can work beyond the instructions that you give it, because it has the ability to, at some level, think and answer. So very quickly, scenario 2. Let's pick up the AI ticket summarizer and talk about, it's simple but realistic. This capability, there's clear upside in efficiency, there's clear risk in content and privacy, because we saw this being classified, at least if I remember, as a, what was it, as a medium risk item, right? So the workbook's example metrics and simulation are built around this. You can stick with it mentally or map to a similar AI feature you are working on. So your intended benefits are faster issue understanding, shorter ticket handling time, more consistent responses. Potential risks are, you can have incorrect or misleading summaries because the model hallucinates or maybe doesn't understand some context. Leak internal notes or PII through the model, or agent over or under trust. Like, we could be in any of those situations. So we'll use this scenario as the anchor for lab 2 and see what all of it is about. So the lab 2 is 30 minutes. I know we don't have that much time, so I'm going to do a similar fashion run through the worked example that I have. And all of you are more than welcome to fill in your, I'll give us 5 minutes to just walk through the thing, look at the framework before you look at the answer, and see if you feel like you want to fill something in based on the conversations that we are having today, or something that comes to your mind. So for one AI feature, established how you measure its utility and user engagement. Define risk and reliability metrics. Identify key indicators for potential negative impacts to the system. Um, Define trust and perception metrics. Determine how to gauge user confidence and sentiments towards that AI feature. And then set guardrail thresholds and actions, like establish automated limits and responses for when these defined boundaries are crossed. And then we'll run an incident simulation to say, hey, you wake up this morning and you get a call from your manager that says, Well, this metric is above this on week one. What do we do? So let's move on to our Google Doc. Let me quickly change my screen share. Cool. So the exercise description is here. Second. Sorry. This is not supposed to be in there, right? So define a concrete metrics and guardrail spec for AI feature, and then stress tested with an incident scenario so teams learn how to use metrics to drive real decisions, not just dashboards. You are the idea would be pick one feature, and this is just what we talked about in the slide deck. Define metrics across these three buckets, set guardrails, thresholds, and actions. Like for example, thresholds that indicate, hey, the number at this stage is no longer okay. Like you can define, let's say, a metric that says active usage. If active usage falls below, let's say, 30%, you want to be alerted because that's the number below which your, economics of the platform sort of start going down, or you lose money on every, usage that the customer makes because your infrastructure is no longer being subsidized by the ARR coming in. So you want to be able to know what's the threshold after which that metric is bad, really bad. And then you want to describe what events data you want to log, where this data will live, who reviews which metrics and how often, and you can run a mini incident simulation that says week one this was the number, week three this was the number, and then we decide what do we do at each point. So the the framework here essentially is the same. I could have asked you guys to do this, which is this is not read only. Sorry about that. Um, Okay, I will leave this be. This is wrong. So stating the feature clearly keeps everyone aligned. You're more than welcome to take these templates and work with them if you want to. I am just gonna yeah, run through this particular example. So I'm taking the example of AI support ticket summarizer. Um, the model generates a short summary of each customer ticket so agents can respond faster. That's the brief, right? So stating the feature clearly keeps everyone aligned. There's no questions on what it means, so that later on, the metrics that you build are also aligned on top of the context that you're providing. A crisp use case lets you design specific observable metrics tied to a real workflow. So how would I go about building this? So the first category for me is value and adoption metrics. These metrics justify the existence of the feature. Like if you didn't have these, why are we even building this, right? The key question that comes up is, are people even going to use what I'm building? And so that's where the value and adoption metrics make sense. They can help defend decisions for you, like are you rolling out slowly, why are you rolling out slowly, and those are the metrics that you can measure to capture. So AI usage rate, you can say percentage of support tickets where an AI summary is viewed or inserted at least once. The important thing about metrics is you need to have your metrics um, on deterministic numbers, but also add a scope to them. They cannot be unbounded. So the fact that we're saying viewed or inserted at least once is a really important metric, is a really important caveat of the metric. um, the data source, these are some things that you can figure out how it works in a team, and you can usually review your usage weekly. Time saved per ticket, this is the average handling time non AI minus average handling time when AI summary is used. So if you will see a delta, and if this is positive, your AI is doing the job that's supposed to do. You can measure this monthly because tickets have different solve times. Like you might have some seasonality in tickets, so week over week this measurement doesn't really make sense because it's very difficult to put it into perspective. One week you can have a lot of tickets, the other week you don't, and then it'll look like your metric has fallen down when it doesn't. So you want to take a longer period of aggregation. Agent AI adoption rate, percentage of active agents who use AI summaries on at least X tickets per week. So this is basically saying, hey, are the humans actually adopting this, right? Um, and so this is also something you want to measure monthly, because the rate of the tickets coming in, because this is at a per ticket level, but this is at number of people leveraging. So some people can have higher workload, some people can have lower workload. You don't want the metrics to skew in any way. So the other bit is the risk and reliability metrics. This is the key part. These make failure visible. Without them, harmful patterns, example, bad summaries in a specific language or vertical, can go unnoticed. Heavy edit rate tells you if agents trust the output enough to use it. And unsafe flags, incidents tell you when the AI activity is creating problems. So heavy edit discard rate, which means percentage of AI summaries where agents either delete or edit greater than 70% of the suggested context. This is important because this limits the scope. If I said percentage of AI summaries where agents either delete or edit, it will consider all the tickets where any edit has happened. But that's not accurate, because sometimes you might want to make a few edits because there's a slight context mismatch, or the AI thought something slightly wrongly, but that's okay. AI can do that. We have to give that freedom of making an error to the AI. But greater than 70% means AI is doing a really bad job, right? So you want to compare AI draft versus final agent reply, in how you can log this difference. So you can the AI suggestion and then what finally went in, and you can say, hey, this is more than 70% different. You can have unsafe, harmful flag rate. Like you these days, every AI response has this capability to, say thumbs up, thumbs down, and a reason why thumbs down. So percentage of AI summaries flagged as unsafe, inappropriate, or misleading is also a really important indicator. This goes bad, your AI is not performing well. This goes bad, your AI is a risk to customer sentiment. It's a risk to daily interaction. uh, AI related incident count. So number of escalated customer incidents where AI output contributed meaningfully. So if you saw the impact of the tickets that uh, had AI output involvement, and somehow their metrics were not improving, maybe they were running longer, if they were running, if there was customer sentiment was negative in those interactions where AI involvement was, what you will see is that, I built this great AI tool that I feel like it's doing great on value adoption, but all of these metrics are bad, which means I'm going to hurt my customers some way or the other down the line. Then we have trust and perception metrics. In this one, uh, what you have is, so even if your value looks good and incidents like these are rare, um, AI is, you're not editing a lot of content, what AI suggests. You can still have eroding trust. Agents might silently stop replying on AI or override everything. Trust metrics capture the human side of reliability. So this is and help you catch issues before they show up in churn or escalation. So think of this as like a leading indicator to problems, right? So if you have a survey, I trust AI summaries to help me respond effectively. If you do this periodically on a quarterly basis, and if you see this dipping down, whatever these metrics are measuring is not reflecting the current scenario, because no matter what you're doing, maybe the case that this greater than 70% of suggested text is a bad scope, maybe you have to look at more than 50%, right? Where maybe you have to look at, maybe what it's suggesting is not so inappropriate, but it's kind of not effective. And so this agent trust score might be going down. Perceived AI summary quality. So this is the qualitative assessment of how you feel. It's not, numbers are not showing this. You could do this quarterly. And similarly, you have like agent, I think I may have repeated line items 1 and 3. I need to delete this one, sorry. Yes. So you can have like these two measures. Everybody has knows NPS, and running that frequently for your on surveys for your AI capabilities is a must. Then, how do we move from knowing our metrics to knowing when are they going bad, right? So let's take an example. So now we choose which risk trust metrics get hard guardrails and define what happens when they're crossed. Guardrails is like you, so let's say you are going hiking on the top of a mountain, right? A guardrail is a, that railing on the side that prevents you from falling over. If you are beyond that guardrail, that means you are on in a high risk of falling down or have already fallen down, right? So think about your metrics in the same way. As long as your metrics are within guardrails, they're okay. But as long as they cross the guardrail, they're either all the customer sentiment or something has either gone really bad or it's on the verge of going really, really bad. So let's say on the unsafe harmful flag, um, you find that greater than 0.5% of AI summaries over 2 consecutive weeks are going bad, right? We have, sorry, greater than 0.5% of all AI summaries for 2 consecutive weeks are unsafe or harmful. It's time to ring the bell. Your action limit has been breached, and you say, hey, freeze rollout to new customers, sample flagged outputs, convene PM plus DM, data science plus legal plus security review to say what's going bad, because this is on the verge of climbing up. Similarly, heavy edit discard rate. So if greater than 70% over 3 consecutive weeks. So here you define the metric. You said greater than 70%. This is what I'm going to measure. But if that measurement is bad for 3 consecutive weeks, I will need to treat this as a quality issue. I don't have to wait any longer. You can pause any expansion because any expansion means all the new customers or new launch wherever you're going to launch newly is going to be seeing this bad quality percolating to them through the pipeline. And you want to run targeted agent interviews to see what are the responses and what is causing those responses. um, AI related P0 P1 incident. So let's say if you had greater than one severe incident in a month, you need to go back. Like severe incidents take the whole of organizational bandwidth and they do not allow you to like focus on the actual product work or customer work that you want to build out. So temporarily disabling AI may be an option because you don't feel, and things will start working, like things will continue working with agents running everything. Your people agent, running everything. Run incident root cause analysis, notify leadership because leadership needs to probably talk to customers to manage those sentiments. So it's a closed loop of how you go around building these things, right? And then you need to have a monitoring and instrumentation plan. You define the metric, you define what bad looks like, but there is no use if you can't get that data. Like all of this is just theoretical if you can't actually hook up to systems that provide that data, right? So how do you make sure that when you're thinking about your product, you need to build in that BI and instrumentation that generates this information that then you can convert it into a metric. So you need to know what events you want to log. So the AI summary, a summary generated event with model version input length latency, AI summary viewed, inserted, edited, or deleted events. These need to be from the interactions in the tool that the agent is doing. Feedback events. Anybody does a thumbs up, thumbs down, or adds a comment on why. Links between tickets and escalated incidents. So you need to have a data model that allows you to link. This is the ticket, this is the incident, and I can run a report to get all of these tickets out where things have gone bad, and then we can look into the content for those tickets. Storage and access, you might want to make sure that these events are stored into like a single data warehouse, a Snowflake or any tool of your choice, from where then you can run any BI tool to build your aggregated dashboards like Tableau or Snowflake's own dashboards or Amplitude, whichever works for you. And then obviously, I'm not going to talk about it. I think we do this in a everyday basis. We need dashboards to view our metrics. We need to set up alerts when flag rate crosses threshold, and this is how you operationalize the guardrails, right? You put the guardrails on the BI tool to say, hey, if it crosses 70%, give me an alert. And I need, like, every morning I wake up, I have a summary of what all has gone bad, and then I can go and look into it. So an incident simulation example format, right? Um, so the simulation shows whether your guardrails actually drive behavior. It forces the team to practice reading metrics in context, deciding when to pull back versus keep going, picking who to involve and what data to inspect. This is much closer to how AI risk is handled actually in reality, not by designing metrics once, but by actually using them under different situations to say if they break, if they're giving stupid answers, do I need to go and revisit my metric? So this is your situation on week one. So you found adoption 10%, heavy edit, on a sheet was 30%, unsafe flags were 0.5%, there were zero incidents. So you looked at this information in the morning and you said, okay, um, our decision monitor only, no change. Rationale, you have baseline metrics are well below threshold, you know everything, there have been no alerts. You want to focus on improving adoption because that's really low. Week three, you find adoption is 35%, but heavy edits have gone 55%. Unsafe flags have doubled. There was a minor complaint about tone deaf summary. When you look at all of this, this information has come in. You're like, I want to investigate examples, but continue to roll out uh, carefully, review samples of flag summaries, check if problem is localized, and then do a root cause analysis. Week six, you find adoption is really high, but heavy edits have gone to 60%. Unsafe flags have, gone 6 times, and there's one serious incident. This is the time to sort of trigger freeze rollout because you don't want to go beyond 50% with the problems that currently exist. So you can, your threshold is breached, your incident is serious. You'll inspect logs and find out that this root cause cannot percolate anymore to the system. You have to cut it at the source. And so you'll have to freeze the rollout, find the root cause, fix it, and then start your rollout again. So this is how kind of we simulate week over week how your rollouts are going. I know there's only 5 minutes left, so I'm going to quickly wrap this up. We So we did a debrief. Just a quick debrief. Just to do a quick debrief, we learned about the value metrics. We learned about guardrails and triggers that we need to put into place in when they are breached, what action we should take, and we need to think about like what would be the hardest to implement in our own organization because things vary differently across all of our organizations. Um, so your two reusable artifacts from this session are the at-risk tiering modeling that we did in the first session, in the first lab, and the trust and risk metrics playbook that we just designed in the second lab. Please feel free to use this doc. Um, how to use this in your doc is just a way to operationalize is run an AI alignment session, like facilitate a 60 to 90-minute workshop similar to this one with 3 to 5 real AI initiatives that you have ongoing in your organization with security, legal, data science, and product partners. Apply your responsible AI playbook. This two things that we discussed. This is just some important things that you can leverage in the entirety of what is available. And then commit to the key actions. Like once you have this thing set up and you have your guardrails, um, implement this in your next AI launch. Like unless you implement, all of this remains theoretical in an exercise. If you go and change the outlook in your organization to implement, that's when things start becoming really, really interesting. So commit to it once you have built this out. Some questions: where would this be the hardest to implement in an organization? What are potential areas where legal or security teams might push back? What's one feature you're thinking about differently now after this session? I think these are the answers you might have to think about. Thank you. I truly appreciate your engagement and insights today. Let's continue building responsible AI solutions together. I enjoy this space and I hope you did too, the session today. If you'd like to continue the conversation, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Um, Build AI your customers can trust. That's my motto. I will share this presentation outline with the folks who are organizing this, and they will be able to share out to you separately. Is that possible, Alex?
Can you repeat it again?
If I share this presentation, can you share it with the attendees later on?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for
Thank you.
attending.
Thank you, Balbodh, so
Yeah,
much
please
for
leave
this
any
interesting
feedback.
presentation.
Yeah, and please leave any feedback with the team that you may have. Thank you. Have a
Thank you
good
so
day.
much. Bye.